Hey there, music lovers. Thank you so much for hanging out and for dropping by the channel and leaving all these great comments. And if you're a new subscriber, welcome to the channel. I wanted to talk about a new band on the scene that has been causing quite the stir, Greta Van Fleet. They've been around since 2012, but they just put some songs out. I think it was last year or the year before. They've only got a couple of EPs out, about 8 songs total. Won't have their first full-length album out until later this year. 4 guys out of Michigan. They're mostly brothers. 3 of them are brothers, and they range in ages from 18 to 21. And the thing about them is they sound a whole lot like Led Zeppelin. Specifically, the lead singer sounds just like Robert Plant from the very first Zeppelin album. It's like a holy shit kind of thing. I remember when I first heard Highway Tune, that was like, what the hell is going on here? This sounds like Plant. This sounds like Zeppelin 1. And saw this interview with Robert Plant. I'll put it all down below for you to check out. It's not very, very long. And they bring it up to him. And he's like, yeah, he says, that's Zeppelin 1. And kind of chuckled at the Aerosmith reference. Like, I don't know about the Aerosmith. This sounds like Zeppelin. Like, the band downplays the influence of Zeppelin. They claim that they were digging into the blues, like, the Howlin' Wolf and that kind of stuff. And that sounds just like what Zeppelin was doing for their first album. I mean, that's the whole point. They were digging into these blues songs from the 30s and 40s, and they were turning them into these, hard rock blues hybrids, which, at that point in the late 60s, that was groundbreaking stuff. Nobody was really doing that. But now, 50 years plus into this rock and roll thing, it's kind of hard for a band to kind of come out with something fresh and new that no one's ever heard before. And, Greta Van Fleet are not denying that Zeppelin was an influence, but they're saying it's a bit overstated. I don't know, man. I think that the lead singer, I think your mother probably had a pair of headphones when you were in the womb, like one on each side of her belly. I think she had Led Zeppelin 1 on while you were still shitting your pants, and maybe you didn't know it, but I don't know, man. It sounds like Zeppelin was very much a part of your influences. And that's one of the things that this band's got to be careful of. Right now it's really cool to hear a band that is like a throwback, because there's a lot of bullshit out there in the rock scene. And so it's refreshing to hear a band that has a 70s throwback kind of a vibe. I know that, like, when Rush first came out with their album, their very first album, they sounded like Zeppelin and Black Sabbath. And, when, like, Working Man first hit the airwaves, people were calling in like, is that the new Zeppelin album? And, by the time they got to their second album, Fly By Night, they were totally in their own league. No one ever compared them again to Zeppelin. And I think that Greta Van Fleet's got to be careful that they don't stay as this Zeppelin-like band. For now it's really cool, but eventually you want to have a new song come out and you want people to be like, oh wow, is that Greta Van Fleet? That doesn't sound like them. That's what you want. You want to have these songs coming out and this kind of music that kind of throws people off, and you're kind of doing something fresh and it's your own sound. They've got to get their own sound. So that's one of the things that kind of sucks about bands nowadays, that it's hard to be original and do something that no one's ever heard before. And it's also tough to get with a record label that gives you time and that allows you to kind of find yourself. Back in the 60s and 70s, it was commonplace for, a record label to give you 4 or 5 albums to kind of, find your audience and to find your sound and everything. Nowadays, it's almost like a one and done kind of an attitude. Like, if, your first or second album isn't a hit, then you're done. And that's a shame, because it doesn't encourage bands to explore and to kind of get out there and do their thing. But, overall, I really do like these guys, and I think they show a lot of promise. I don't want to be too hard on them because they haven't even put their first full-length album out yet. I want to see what they wind up doing. They still have time. Some songs that I recommend you check out would be like Safari Song, Highway Tune, Black Smoke Rising is great. They have this other song called Flower Power, which reminds me of Your Time Is Gonna Come from the first Zeppelin album. I'll put links to everything downstairs so you can check it out too. And there's this other video too that you got to see. It's called something like Elderly People React to Greta Van Fleet. And they basically got these seniors to listen to Greta and see if they could tell the difference between them and Led Zeppelin. And it's really, really cool. It kind of reminded me, you know, when I was growing up, if you were in your 60s or 70s, you didn't care about Led Zeppelin. You were listening to the crooners like, you know, Perry Como and Frank Sinatra and those types. And nowadays, you know, if you're in your 60s and 70s, it kind of like reminded me, you could be a Led Zeppelin fan. You kind of come from that time period, and it just goes to show you how times have changed. Anyway, I'll put all of that below for you to check out. I want to know what you think about Greta Van Fleet. You think they sound like Zeppelin? How do you like their new tunes? What do you think is going to happen to them in the future? Comment below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Hit subscribe too. Thanks for stopping by, and I will see you next time.